All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at like this really big question. What's the roadmap to achieving nibbana in Buddhist thought? And we've got these excerpts from a text on like Buddhist meditation practice to kind of help guide us along the way. So
Okay.
let's jump right in.
Yeah, I think what's so cool about this text is that it presents the path to Nibbana as like not this mystical out there concept,
Right.
but like a very practical step-by-step process that anyone can like undertake.
Yeah. And when you say step by step, you're talking about the Noble Eightfold Path, right?
Exactly.
But like, I'll be honest, whenever I hear about the Eightfold Path, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other and feels a little
Okay.
abstract.
Yeah, I get that. It can definitely sound like a list you'd find in like a textbook or something.
Right, exactly.
But like if we actually break it down, each element on the path offers like really concrete guidance on like how we live our lives.
Right.
Like take right speech, for instance. It's about like being mindful of what we say, avoiding harmful gossip or lies. Like that's something we can all like apply in our daily interactions, right? Whether it's at work or with family or even, online.
That's a good point, yeah. So it's not just about these like lofty philosophical ideals. It's about like how we communicate
Right.
with each other right here,
Yeah,
right now.
exactly. And then there's like right livelihood, like choosing a profession that doesn't harm others. Like if you think about it, that concept encourages us to align like our work with our values to make sure we're not like contributing to suffering through our jobs.
So it's about ethical action that like extends beyond our personal lives and into our like professional choices too.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is. And what's so fascinating is how this text really emphasizes that all 8 elements of the path are like interconnected,
Yeah.
They work together, they support each other to create this like holistic approach to liberation.
So it's not just about like picking and choosing
Right.
the elements that like sound appealing.
Right.
It's about embracing the whole thing.
That's the idea. Yeah. And like one of the key tools this text emphasizes for like progressing on the path is, of course, meditation.
Right.
Specifically, mindfulness of breathing.
Okay, mindfulness of breathing. Now that's something I've definitely like dabbled in, but I'm always curious to learn more about like the specifics of it.
Sure.
And what I find really intriguing is how something as simple as breathing can be so transformative.
It really is. And this text lays out like the practice so beautifully, like, guiding the reader through these 4 distinct stages. First, there's like simply noticing the breath.
Okay.
Is it long? Is it short? Is it deep? Is it shallow? And then as you like become more attuned to the breath, you start feeling it throughout your whole body.
So it's about like expanding your awareness beyond just the sensation of like air passing through your nostrils.
Precisely. And then the text talks about like calming the breath, making it more like subtle and refined.
Okay, this calming part always trips me up because like I find myself trying to like force my breath to be slow and steady, and it just makes me more tense.
Yeah, that's a common trap for sure.
Yeah.
The text emphasizes that it's not about like forcing the breath, but rather like creating the conditions for calmness to like arise naturally. Think of it like tending a garden.
Okay.
Like you can't force a flower to bloom,
Right.
but you can provide the right soil, water, sunlight to like support its growth.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really takes the pressure off, knowing that it's about like creating a supportive environment rather than forcing anything.
Exactly. And when you reach that point of like deep calmness and concentration, something remarkable can happen. The text describes the appearance of nimitta.
Okay, nimitta. Now we're getting into some intriguing territory. But honestly, like the whole idea of nimitta always seemed a bit like out there to me,
I understand that.
Like, how do I know what I'm supposed to see? What if I'm just making it up?
Right. I totally understand your skepticism. It's important to approach nimitta with a healthy dose of like discernment, right? And the text emphasizes that nimitta is a very personal experience.
Okay.
It's shaped by our individual perceptions and tendencies. So while one person might see like a bright light, another person might see a, delicate flower or something like that.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong answer.
So it's not about like chasing after some specific vision. It's more about, noticing what arises naturally as your concentration deepens.
That's the key. The text uses like the analogy of polishing a mirror.
Okay.
As you like diligently remove the dirt and grime through practice, the mirror's inherent clarity like reveals itself naturally. Nimitta's kind of like that. It's not something you like create. It's something that emerges as the mind becomes more still and refined.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how all of this fits together. You've got the Eightfold Path, which provides like this ethical framework,
Right.
mindfulness of breathing, which is like training the mind.
Yeah.
And then the Mitta arises as a sign of progress.
Right.
But even with a clear path and helpful techniques, I imagine there are bound to be some challenges along the way. Right?
You're absolutely right. And the text doesn't shy away from that. Like, it dedicates a significant portion to discussing what it calls the 5 hindrances. These are like obstacles that can, derail our meditation practice and like keep us stuck in patterns of suffering.
The 5 hindrances. I feel like I know those guys all too well. But before we dive into those, let's take a moment to recap what we've covered so far. So we're on this quest to understand the roadmap to Nibbana. And we've seen how the Noble Eightfold Path provides these like practical guidelines for living a life aligned with this goal, right?
Yes.
Then we explored mindfulness of breathing, which is this like core meditation technique,
Right.
and how it can lead to the arising of nimitta, which is a sign of like deepening concentration. Is that a fair summary so far?
Perfect. You've really captured the essence of what we've explored so far.
Okay, great. So are you ready to face these infamous 5 hindrances?
Bring 'em on. Let's hear what these obstacles are and how we can like overcome them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So, let's get down to business with these hindrances. First up, we have sensual desire, that craving for pleasurable experiences.
Okay, sensual desire. I think we can all relate to that one, right? Whether it's that extra slice of cake or like endlessly scrolling through social media.
Right.
We've all been there.
Absolutely, yeah. But the interesting thing is how this text frames sensual desire, not just as something to like avoid, but as like an opportunity for like deeper understanding.
Okay.
It encourages us to examine like the impermanent nature of those pleasurable experiences, to see how that initial like excitement fades, often leaving us wanting like more.
So it's not about like denying ourselves pleasure altogether.
Right.
It's about becoming more aware of like the fleeting nature of those desires.
Exactly. And by like recognizing this impermanence, we can start to like weaken the grip those desires have over us. Now let's talk about the second hindrance, ill will. This one can be a real like energy drainer, right?
And ill will. It's like carrying around a heavy backpack full of like resentment and anger.
Right.
I know for me, this often pops up in traffic, like road rage is my weakness.
Oh, we've all been there. But what's interesting is like how the text suggests we like tackle this particular hindrance. Instead of suppressing those feelings of like anger or frustration,
Right.
it encourages us to cultivate like the opposite loving kindness and compassion.
Wait, so instead of getting mad at that guy who cut me off, I should be sending him like good vibes.
Right.
That sounds a bit unrealistic.
Yeah, it might feel like counterintuitive at first, but like think about it. Holding on to anger only hurts us. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. By cultivating loving kindness, we're actually taking care of our own like mental well-being.
Okay, I see the logic there. It's about like shifting our perspective.
Right.
And choosing a response that like benefits us rather than fueling the fire of like negativity.
That's a great way to put it. Now, ready to tackle the next 2 hindrances? Sloth and torpor.
Okay.
And restlessness and remorse.
Okay, so those two often feel like they go hand in hand for me. Like one minute I'm like zoning out on the couch, and the next minute I'm like replaying past mistakes, and stressing about the future. It's like,
Yeah, tell me about it. Sometimes it feels like our minds are just like ping pong balls, like bouncing between lethargy and anxiety.
Right, exactly. So what does this text offer as an antidote to this, like mental chaos?
Well, for like sloth and torpor, that mental dullness and lack of energy.
Right.
The text suggests like engaging the body.
Okay.
It's fascinating how it emphasizes like the connection between like physical and mental states. So instead of like forcing yourself to sit perfectly still when your mind is like foggy.
Yeah.
Try incorporating gentle movement, maybe like walking meditation
Right.
or even just like changing your posture.
So sometimes a little like physical shakeup can help clear the mental cobwebs.
Exactly. And then like for restlessness and remorse,
Okay.
that feeling of being caught in this like mental whirlwind, the text recommends focusing on the breath as like an anchor to the present moment.
The breath, our trusty companion on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
But like, how does focusing on the breath actually help with those like swirling thoughts?
It's about like training the mind to like stay grounded
Right.
in the here and now. You know, when we get caught up in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, our breath is like always there. It's this constant reminder of the present moment. It's like a lifeline, like pulling us back to shore when we're caught in like a mental rip current.
That's a powerful image. It makes me realize how easily we get swept away by those like mental currents without even realizing it.
We do. And that's where like mindfulness comes in, right? It's developing the awareness to like recognize when we're drifting away and gently guiding ourselves back to the present moment.
Okay, so we've covered 4 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, and restlessness and remorse, which leaves us with the final and perhaps most insidious obstacle, doubt.
Doubt, the ultimate mind bender. This one can be particularly tricky because it often disguises itself as like critical thinking or like healthy skepticism.
Yeah, I've definitely fallen into that trap before, like questioning the teachings, doubting my own experiences, wondering if this whole path is even worth it. Like, it can be paralyzing.
It can, yeah. But the text offers like a really insightful perspective on doubt.
Okay.
It encourages us to see it not as an enemy to be like defeated, but as like an opportunity for like deeper inquiry. No?
So instead of trying to like shove doubt under the rug, we should like engage with it.
Exactly. The text suggests using our doubt to like fuel our investigation, you know, to explore the teachings with an open mind and see if they like truly resonate with our own experience.
So it's not about like blindly believing everything we hear. It's about like actively engaging with the teachings and like testing them out for ourselves.
Right. Kind of like a scientific experiment, forming a hypothesis.
Yeah, exactly.
And gathering evidence through our own practice.
Okay, I'm starting to see doubt in a whole new light, not as a like roadblock, but as a potential like guidepost.
Exactly. Now, we've explored these 5 hindrances in detail, but I'm curious, what stands out to you the most? Which hindrance do you personally find the most like challenging?
That's a tough one. They all seem to take turns popping up at the most inconvenient times.
Yeah.
But I think for me, restlessness and remorse are like the toughest duo to deal with.
Yeah.
My mind just loves to replay past mistakes.
Yeah.
And worry about what's to come.
Right.
It's exhausting.
I hear you, those two can be real energy vampires.
Yeah.
But remember what the text suggests, like bringing your attention back to the breath.
Right.
Anchoring yourself in the present moment. It's like hitting the pause button on that mental movie that's playing on repeat in your head.
For the breath, my trusty anchor. I need to get better at remembering that it's always there for me no matter how like chaotic my mind gets.
It is, yeah. And remember, you know, even experienced meditators struggle with these hindrances. It's not about like achieving some like perfect state of like mental stillness.
Right.
It's about like recognizing when these obstacles arise and skillfully navigating them with the tools that, you know, we've been talking about.
So it's a journey of continuous learning and refinement, not like a destination we arrive at overnight.
Right.
Okay, I can get on board with that. But, you know, while we've been focusing a lot on mindfulness of breathing, the text mentions that there are actually many different like subjects of meditation. I'm curious to learn more about those other like techniques.
You're right. There's a whole world of like meditative practices out there.
Yeah.
This text specifically mentions 40 different subjects of samatha meditation.
40. That's a lot to choose from.
It is, yeah.
Can you give us a taste of what some of those like other techniques involve?
Absolutely. Besides mindfulness of breathing, the text like highlights analyzing the 4 elements as a particularly like powerful practice.
The 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water.
Yes.
How do you like meditate on those?
It's about like tuning into the qualities of each element within your own body. For instance, like earth might be represented by the like solidity of your bones and muscles, while air might be like the feeling of your breath or the movement of your lungs. Fire could be like the warmth of your body or the energy that like fuels your digestion. And water could be experienced as like the fluidity of your blood or the saliva in your mouth.
That's fascinating. It's like taking an inventory of your own like internal landscape and connecting with the elements that like make up our physical form.
Exactly. And by like contemplating these elements, we can gain a deeper understanding of their like impermanent and interconnected nature.
So it's another way of cultivating that wisdom of like seeing through the illusion of like a solid separate self.
Precisely. Now, while we've touched on like different meditation techniques, this text keeps circling back to the importance of like jhana. Remember, jhana is that state of like deep concentration where the mind becomes like incredibly still and refined.
Right, jhana. We touched on it a bit earlier, but I'm ready to dive deeper into like what this state actually entails. What's so special about it? All right, jhana. So from what I remember, it's this state of like profound concentration. But the text, it kind of presents it as more than just, you know, having laser focus.
Yeah, it is. Jhana is often described as like the state of like blissful absorption where the hindrances we talked about like fade away and the mind becomes like incredibly still and clear. But like the truly fascinating part is what the text says about the different like levels of jhana, each characterized by like unique qualities.
Different levels. So it's not just like one single state you either like reach or you don't.
Right. It's more like a staircase, like with 4 distinct steps. The first jhana is marked by like the sense of like joy and rapture. It's like that feeling of being totally engrossed in something you love, where like all distractions just melt away and you're like completely present in the moment.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that. Like when I'm like lost in a good book or like deeply engaged in a creative project and like time just seems to fly by.
Exactly. But the text explains that like even within that joy, there's still like a subtle level of like mental activity. As you move into the second jhana, that initial excitement calms down, leading to like a deeper sense of like tranquility and peace.
So it's like that feeling of calm after the storm, where like the energy is still present, but it's like more grounded and stable.
The perfect analogy. And then like as you progress further, even that subtle sense of joy kind of fades away as you enter the third jhana.
This level is characterized by like a deep sense of like equanimity, a state of like even-mindedness and stability where you're no longer like swayed by the ups and downs of like thoughts and emotions.
Wow, that sounds incredibly peaceful.
But what's interesting is that the text suggests even this like profound tranquility isn't the final stop. There's a fourth jhana, right?
You're right. In the fourth jhana, even the subtlest sensations of like pleasure and pain dissolve. It's like a state of pure awareness detached from all like worldly concerns. The text describes it as like a state of neither pleasure nor pain.
Neither pleasure nor pain. That's a hard concept to like wrap my head around. What does that even feel like?
Yeah, it's difficult to describe in words because it's like beyond our ordinary experience. But the text uses the analogy of a lake, so still and clear that you can see all the way to the bottom, like without any ripples distorting the view. It's like this state of complete clarity and purity of mind.
I'm starting to get a glimpse of it. But with all this talk about these incredibly like refined states of consciousness, I have to ask, what's the point? Like, is achieving jhana the ultimate goal of like Buddhist meditation?
That's where it gets really interesting. This text emphasizes that like jhana, while profound, is not the end game. It's more like a training ground, a foundation for developing even like deeper insights into the nature of reality.
So it's like climbing a mountain. Jhana might be like base camp, but the summit is still like further ahead.
Exactly. And that summit, according to this text, is nibbana. The complete liberation from suffering. Jhana helps us cultivate like the mental strength and stability needed to like traverse the rest of the path.
That makes sense. But what I'm still like grappling with is like, how exactly do we get from jhana to nibbana? What's the like missing link?
The bridge between those two is vipassana, often translated as insight meditation. While jhana is about like calming and concentrating the mind.
Right.
Vipassana is about using that like focused mind to like directly observe the nature of reality.
So it's like we're taking those like Jhanic superpowers and applying them to like investigate our own experience, seeing things as they truly are.
That's the essence of it. And what Vipassana reveals is that everything we experience, our thoughts, emotions, sensations, even our sense of self, is impermanent, constantly changing, and ultimately not self.
There's that concept of not self again. Honestly, it still feels like a bit of a paradox to me.
Right.
Like, how can there be no self if I'm like clearly experiencing the world as me?
It's a profound concept, and this text acknowledges that it can be like challenging to grasp for sure.
Yeah.
It's not about like denying our individual experience, but about seeing through the illusion of a solid, independent self. It's like realizing that like a wave is ultimately not separate from the ocean, even though it appears to have like its own form and movement for a while.
Okay, I'm starting to see it.
Yeah.
So Vipassana is about using the clarity and focus cultivated in jhana to directly experience this truth of not self, right?
Yes.
But how does that actually lead to the end of suffering?
Think about it. Like, so much of our suffering stems from like clinging to this idea of a like fixed, unchanging self. We get attached to our possessions, our opinions, our identities.
Right.
And when those things inevitably change or are threatened, we experience like pain and frustration.
So by seeing through the illusion of self, we loosen the grip of those attachments.
Right.
And therefore, like, reduce our suffering.
Exactly. It's like waking up from a dream.
Right.
When we realize the dream isn't real, we're no longer like bound by its rules and limitations.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
Yeah.
But it also sounds incredibly challenging. Where do we even begin to like unravel this illusion of self and cultivate this kind of insight?
This text, while exploring these like profound concepts, is ultimately like a practical guide. It constantly brings us back to the importance of mindfulness in like everyday life. Remember, mindfulness is about like paying attention to our like present moment experience with an attitude of like curiosity and non-judgment.
So even though we're aiming for these like lofty goals like jhana and nibbana, it all starts with cultivating that like basic awareness of what's happening right here, right now.
That's the foundation. And the text offers like really practical suggestions for like how to integrate mindfulness into our daily routines. It talks about bringing awareness to like simple activities like walking, eating, washing dishes, even breathing.
Wait, washing dishes as like a spiritual practice. I never thought of it that way.
It's about bringing that same like quality of attention and presence to those like mundane tasks. Feeling the warmth of the water, noticing the texture of the sponge, being fully present in that moment.
It's not about like adding more things to our to-do list. It's about bringing like a different quality of awareness to what we're already doing.
Exactly. And as we cultivate this mindfulness, it naturally starts to like seep into other areas of our lives. We become more aware of our thoughts and emotions, our reactions to situations, our interactions with others.
It's like we're slowly rewiring our brains, shifting from a state of like autopilot to one of like conscious awareness.
That's a great way to put it. And as this awareness grows, we start to see like more clearly the patterns of thinking and behavior that keep us trapped in like cycles of suffering.
So mindfulness isn't just about feeling calm and relaxed. It's about developing the insight needed to like break free from those unhealthy patterns.
Precisely. And that's ultimately what this path is all about, you know, cultivating the wisdom and compassion needed to live a life like free from suffering, not just for ourselves, but for all beings.
This deep dive has been like a real mind opener. We've covered so much ground, from the practicalities of mindfulness to the profound concepts of jhana, vipassana, not self. I feel like I have a much clearer understanding of like the roadmap to nibbana and like most importantly how to take those first steps on the path.
It's been a privilege to explore these teachings with you. And remember, this is just the beginning. There's a lifetime of like learning and discovery ahead for those who choose to, you know, embark on this journey.
Well said. So to all our listeners out there, whether you're a seasoned meditator or just starting to explore these ideas, remember that the path to liberation is always available. It starts with like a single breath, a moment of awareness, a willingness to see things with like fresh eyes. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep the journey alive. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.